6-year-old Nora had been smiling all morning on the Family Feud stage. She laughed when Steve Harvey joked with her family, clapped when her grandmother answered correctly, and even tried to whisper an answer before anyone asked her. Then Steve walked toward her and asked, "You having fun?" Nora nodded. She looked at him for a few seconds, reached up and whispered 4 words, "I saved you one." Steve's smile disappeared. He stared at the little girl, then looked toward her mother. Without explaining anything, he put his cards down, turned around, and walked off the stage. The audience fell completely silent. Nobody understood what had just happened. Then, several minutes later, Steve returned carrying something that made Nora's mother collapse into tears. Nora Williams was 6 years old. She was the youngest member of her family. She wore a lavender dress with tiny white flowers. Her hair was tied into 2 loose braids, and inside her little purse was something she had protected for almost a year, a cookie. Not a real cookie anymore. It was wrapped in a small piece of wax paper. The cookie had been baked months earlier. It was hard, cracked, and completely inedible. But Nora didn't care, because it was the last cookie her father had ever made for her. Her father was named James. He was 38. He worked as a school bus mechanic. He loved old music, he loved fishing, and he believed every bad day could be fixed with something sweet. Whenever Nora was upset, James would make cookies, chocolate chip, peanut butter. Sometimes sugar cookies shaped like stars. Nora's favorite were chocolate chip. One evening, after a long day at school, Nora came home crying. "What's wrong?" "My teacher said my drawing wasn't the best." James looked at her. "Who told you that?" "My teacher." James smiled. "Then your teacher needs to eat one of Daddy's cookies." Nora laughed. "Why?" "Because Daddy's cookies make everybody happy." He went into the kitchen. He made a batch. He gave Nora the first one. She took one bite. "It's too sweet." James laughed. "That's impossible." Nora laughed too. That was the kind of father James was. He didn't have much money. He didn't drive an expensive car. He didn't take them on fancy vacations. But he knew how to make his daughter laugh. Then, one winter morning, James collapsed at work. The doctors discovered an aggressive heart condition. The news came quickly. There was treatment, there were medications, there were appointments. But there was no guarantee. James tried to hide how scared he was. Nora didn't understand the medical words. She only understood that Daddy was tired. He couldn't run with her anymore. He couldn't carry her for long, and sometimes he had to sit down halfway through a sentence. One night, Nora climbed into his bed. "Daddy? Yeah, baby? Are you going to get better?" James looked at her. He smiled. "I'm trying, promise?" He hesitated. Then he kissed her forehead. "I promise I'll always love you." Nora frowned. "That wasn't what I asked." James smiled sadly. "I know." A few weeks later, he went into the hospital. Nora visited him every afternoon. She brought drawings, she brought cards, and one day she brought him a cookie. James laughed. "Is that one of mine?" Nora nodded. "You made it. He took it. Then I'm keeping it. You have to eat it." James smiled. "Okay." He pretended to take a bite. Nora laughed. "Daddy, what? You didn't eat it?" James smiled. "I was saving it." "For what?" He looked at her. "For later." That was the last cookie he ever held. James died 4 days later. Nora was 6 years old. After the funeral, she asked her mother, "Where's the cookie?" Her mother didn't understand. "What cookie?" "The one Daddy was saving." Nora searched the hospital bag. She found it. It was wrapped in wax paper. She put it inside her little purse. And she carried it everywhere. Her mother asked her to throw it away. Nora refused. Daddy was saving it, so Nora saved it too. Months passed. The cookie became harder, the chocolate chips faded, the edges cracked, but Nora kept it. Then her grandmother suggested something unexpected. Why don't we apply for Family Feud? Nora looked up. Steve Harvey? Her grandmother smiled. Yes, Nora loved watching the show. James had watched it too. Whenever Steve made a joke, James would laugh louder than anyone in the room. Nora remembered that. She wanted to see Steve. She wanted to make him laugh. And secretly, she wanted to give him something. The night before the taping, Nora sat on her bed. She opened her purse. She looked at the cookie. Then she whispered, "Daddy, I'm taking this with me." Her mother stood in the doorway. She heard her. She didn't say anything. The next morning, Nora wore her lavender dress. She put the cookie inside her purse and walked onto the Family Feud stage. The lights were bright. The audience was loud. Steve Harvey walked out. Nora immediately smiled. Steve noticed her. "Well, look at this little superstar." Nora giggled. "What is your name?" "Nora." "Nora what?" "Nora Williams." "Well, Nora Williams, you ready to help your family win some money?" Nora nodded. "Yes," Steve laughed. "I like that confidence." The game began. Nora's family played well. People laughed. Steve joked. Nora clapped. At one point, Steve asked Nora, "You know any answers?" She nodded seriously. "All of them." The audience laughed. Steve put his hand on his chest. "All of them?" "Yes." "Well, we're in trouble now." Nora laughed. For the first time in months, she felt completely happy. Then Steve walked toward her. "You having fun?" Nora nodded. "Yes." Steve smiled. "Good." He started to walk away. Nora suddenly remembered the cookie. "Steve?" He turned. "Yeah?" Nora reached into her purse. She pulled out the small wax paper package. Steve looked confused. "What you got there?" Nora held it toward him. Then she whispered 4 words, "I saved you one." Steve smiled at first. He took the package. "What's this?" Nora didn't answer. Steve carefully opened it. He saw the old cookie. His expression changed. He looked at Nora. Then at the cookie. "What's this?" Nora whispered, "My daddy made it." Steve looked at her. "Your daddy?" Nora nodded. "He died." Steve's smile disappeared. The audience became silent. Steve looked at the cookie again. "When?" "Last year." Steve swallowed. "Why did you bring this?" Nora looked down. "He liked you." Steve froze. Nora continued, "He watched you every night." Steve's eyes filled. Then Nora said, "He said you made people laugh." Steve looked away. He took a breath. Nora smiled. "So I saved one for you." Steve stared at the cookie, then at the little girl. His eyes became wet. He placed the cookie on the podium. He turned away. The audience was completely silent. Steve wiped his face. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. He looked at the producer, then at Nora. He picked up his cards, placed them down again, then he simply walked off the stage. No explanation, no joke, nothing. The audience watched. Nora looked confused. She turned toward her mother. "Did I make him sad?" Her mother knelt. "No, baby, but he left. He'll come back." Nora looked at the empty stage. The cameras remained still. 30 seconds passed, then a minute, then 2. The audience waited. Finally, Steve returned. He wasn't holding his cards. He was holding a small wooden box. He walked toward Nora. He knelt. "Do you know what this is?" Nora shook her head. Steve opened it. Inside was a photograph. It showed James sitting on a couch. He was laughing. Nora was sitting beside him, and on the television behind them was Family Feud. Nora's eyes widened. "That's Daddy." Steve nodded. "I know." Nora looked at her mother. "How did you get that?" Steve smiled. "Your family sent it to the production team." Nora touched the photograph. "Daddy was watching you." Steve nodded. He was. Nora smiled. Steve took a breath. I walked off because I needed a minute. Why? Steve looked at her. Because you reminded me of something. What? That sometimes people leave us things without realizing how important they'll become. Nora listened. Steve pointed at the cookie. Your daddy didn't know that cookie would mean this much to you. Nora nodded. And you didn't know giving it to me would mean something to me. Nora asked, why? Steve smiled. Because somebody trusted me with something precious. Nora smiled. Then Steve said, I can't eat this. Nora looked surprised. Why? Because it belongs in a museum. The audience laughed softly. Nora smiled. Steve continued, I'm going to preserve it. Nora's eyes widened. Really? Really, he promised to have it carefully preserved and placed inside a memory display for the family. Nora hugged him. Steve hugged her back. Then he looked toward her mother. You've been carrying this too? Her mother nodded. Steve said, you know what I think? What? I think James would be proud of her. Her mother cried. Steve continued, she didn't throw away the cookie. She didn't throw away the memory. She carried it. He looked at Nora. But you know something? What? You don't have to carry it forever. Nora looked confused. Steve smiled. You can put it somewhere safe, and then you can keep living. Nora thought about that. Then she nodded. Steve looked toward the producer, paused the game. The audience became quiet again. Steve walked to the center of the stage. Today isn't about the score. He looked at Nora. Today is about a dad who made cookies for his daughter. He pointed toward the photograph. And a little girl who loved him enough to save one. The audience applauded. Steve turned toward the opposing family. Their captain Denise stepped forward. She had tears in her eyes. We'd like to do something. Steve nodded. Denise explained that their family wanted to donate part of their winnings to Nora's future education. Nora's mother shook her head. You don't have to. Denise smiled. We know. Steve nodded. That's what makes it special. The audience applauded again. Then Steve made another announcement. He wanted to create an education fund for Nora. He arranged for $25,000 to be placed into it. Nora's mother cried. Steve, he raised his hand. Let me. He looked at Nora. This isn't for today. He pointed toward her. This is for the woman you're going to become. Nora smiled. Steve asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Nora thought. A teacher. Steve smiled. Why? Because my teacher makes me feel better when I'm sad. Steve nodded. Then you're going to be a great teacher. Nora smiled. The game eventually resumed. But something had changed. The audience laughed differently. The families played differently. Even Steve seemed quieter. At the end, Nora's family didn't win the grand prize. But nobody cared. Steve brought Nora back onto the stage. He handed her the wooden box. Inside was the photograph, and beside it was a small plaque. It said, for Nora, keep the love, keep the memories, keep living. Nora ran her fingers over the words. Then she looked at Steve. Can I give you something else? Steve laughed. What? Nora reached into her pocket. She pulled out a tiny piece of paper. Steve smiled. Another note? Nora nodded. He opened it. It said, Daddy would like you. Steve stared at the words. He laughed. Then he cried. He hugged Nora. Yeah, he whispered, I think I'd like your daddy too. The audience stood. This time they applauded, not because a contestant had won. Because a little girl had turned a broken memory into something beautiful. 3 weeks later, the episode aired. The moment Steve walked off the stage spread online. People initially thought something terrible had happened. Then viewers saw the cookie. They saw Nora. They heard the story. Millions watched. Parents shared photographs of their own children. People shared stories about objects they had kept after someone died. A wedding ring, a handwritten recipe, a baseball glove, a voicemail, a coffee mug, a child's drawing, a sweater. Things that looked ordinary to everyone else, but to the person holding them, they were priceless. One woman wrote, "My father left me a pocket watch. It doesn't work anymore. I never throw it away." Another wrote, "My mother kept one Christmas card from my grandmother for 40 years. Another wrote, "My son still sleeps with his dad's old shirt." Nora's story reminded people that grief isn't always stored in photographs. Sometimes it's stored in tiny things nobody else understands. 6 months later, Nora and her mother returned to the studio. Nora was 7 now. She walked onto the stage carrying a small box. Steve saw her. He smiled. "What's in the box?" Nora smiled. "The cookie." Steve laughed. "You still got it?" "Yes, let me see." Nora opened the box. The cookie had been carefully preserved. It was displayed behind clear glass. Steve smiled. "Looks good." Nora laughed. "You can't eat it." "I know. Daddy would be mad." Steve laughed. "Probably." Nora looked at him. "I brought something else." She handed him a photograph. It showed Nora and her mother making cookies in their kitchen. On the table was a framed photograph of James. Steve looked at it. "You made his cookies?" Nora nodded. "They were terrible." Steve laughed. "That's a family tradition now." Nora smiled. "My mommy cried." Steve looked at her. "Sometimes people cry when they're happy too." Nora nodded. Then she asked, "Do you miss people?" Steve became quiet. "Yes, who?" "People I've loved." Nora thought about that. "Do you keep things?" Steve smiled. "Yeah, what?" He laughed. "A lot." Nora nodded. "Then you understand." Steve smiled. "I do." Years later, Nora would remember the cookie. Not because it was delicious. It wasn't. Not because it was valuable. It wasn't. She remembered it because her father had touched it. He had made it. He had pretended to eat it. And he had said he was saving it for later. For Nora, later became forever. But the cookie also taught her something. You can keep a memory without letting the memory keep you trapped. You can love someone who is gone and still make room for new people. You can cry and still laugh. You can miss yesterday and still look forward to tomorrow. The cookie eventually sat inside a glass case in Nora's bedroom. Beside it was the photograph. Beside the photograph was the note, "Daddy would like you." And beneath it, Nora eventually added another sentence. "I think he would," because she no longer needed the cookie to prove that her father loved her. She knew. She knew because of the stories, because of the photographs, because of the recipes, because of the laughter, because she could still remember the way he called her little girl. And because every time she baked chocolate chip cookies, she felt a little closer to him. Years later, Nora became a teacher. On her first day in the classroom, she brought the framed photograph of her father. She placed it on her desk. A student noticed it. "Who's that?" Nora smiled. "My dad." "Where is he?" Nora looked at the photograph. "Not here." The child looked sad. "I'm sorry." Nora smiled. "Thank you." Then she added, "But he's part of why I'm here." The student didn't understand. Not yet. But someday perhaps they would. Because that was the lesson Nora had learned from the cookie. People don't disappear completely. Sometimes they become the reason you become who you are. Sometimes they live in the things they taught you. Sometimes they live in the traditions you continue. Sometimes they live in a recipe. And sometimes they live in a little girl who carries one old cookie onto a television stage because she wants to share the last thing her father ever made for her. Steve Harvey didn't walk off that stage because he didn't know what to say. He walked off because he understood exactly what the moment meant. A little girl had handed him something she could never replace. And for a few minutes he needed to step away from the cameras and become something more important than a television host. He needed to become a human being. He came back with a box. But what he gave Nora was something much bigger. Permission. Permission to remember. Permission to grieve. Permission to laugh again. And permission to understand that moving forward does not mean leaving someone behind. Sometimes it means taking their love with you. The 4 words Nora whispered that day were simple: I saved you one. But behind those 4 words was an entire story. A father, a daughter, a cookie, a goodbye, and a little girl who refused to let love disappear. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who still keeps a small object because it reminds them of someone they love. Have you ever saved something that seemed worthless to everyone else but meant everything to you? Tell us what it was in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more emotional stories about family, love, loss, and the memories we carry with us.